This field has a lot of potential. I just needed the dozer to do a lot of the work. So I have that now, and I'm ready to do some work. So when I first got this property, I put this ditch in here, and this allowed it to be drained out and used. And when I first got here, the water table was up to the top, so it was just really marshy. But then I put this trench in here. So I'm just gonna slap some of that cheap pipe in here, the 100-foot corrugated perforated pipe, and I'll put some #2 stone, which is 3/4 inch with no fines, and then I'll probably put some fabric on top and then just backfill all this. So on the sides here, I piled up the dirt from, at this time I was using a backhoe, and so I'm gonna be able to level this all out, but I have to get these trenches done first. So I probably have 300 feet of ditch here I got to fill in, and then I can start leveling things out, and I can take the sod off the top and push it all into a pile and get right down to the dirt. I don't know why, but my camera shut off, so I didn't get any of this, but I put the pipe in here and I put some gravel on it. Basically, I just put this gravel in here to protect the pipe while I'm backfilling it, but also it creates more of a void for more water to be at. So this is 100 feet. You can see I got it kind of coiled there. So I got to split off with a Y here, and then over there I got to just extend it. But this is what I got here. So I put this fabric on here to make sure that there's no silt that goes in it. And gravel helps with that too, but if you got both of them, it's even better. Hey, no looking back. Good job. Got it? Yeah, hold it right there. That's good. There you go. Got it. Just grab it and growl. Growl like a bear. You want me to get the rest?
Yeah.
Okay. Come over here and over.
You're really fun.
Yeah? Good. You get hired. So basically what I did in the last hour was double what I had for space here. You can see this is all the new stuff that I just pushed off. Made a pretty good pile here. I gotta clean it up a little bit, but there's a lot of rocks in here though. A lot of big rocks. Hard pan. Everywhere you go, there's just stuff like this. Everywhere's like interlocked with other pieces too. So I got all the stuff that I pushed on this side of the field here. And my plan was to stop dozing here where it's like nice and green and healthy. And around this tree, basically I want to put some fencing and keep that nice and mowed down and looking good, and I'll keep those bushes. And so this whole area here will be like for animals. So, because we have all different kinds of animals that we need to put places, so we're gonna put some of them here, and we're gonna put a garden here too. But basically I want to be able to ride the quad up and around and come back down this way and then go that way. This field is probably about 250 by 250, maybe 300. Not totally sure on that, but I think it's around an acre and a half, acre and a quarter. So if I was trying to get all these rocks off with the dozer, I'd be going back and forth forever. That's why I was using the tractor to get some of these up. And so I'm going to keep doing that, and then when it rains, it'll keep exposing more rocks. You can already see there's some that are poking out here, and they're like right on the surface, but if I keep working at it, eventually I'll just have a little bit more of the good stuff on top. So I just got my son this little quad. It's a 50cc Bombardier, and it's perfect size for him. He's 5 years old, so it works pretty good. So I have this Warrior 350 that I've had it for a few years. I really haven't done much to it. It's old. I think it's 87. I need to redo some stuff on it, but I haven't really used this that much since I bought it. But now that I got my son's quad here, I'm gonna ride it more, and maybe I'll do a video about fixing it up. It's an 87, so it's got a lot of things that I need to do, cosmetics mostly, but it runs good. It's a little bit loud, but maybe I'll put a quieter pipe on it. I think I'm gonna call this good for right now. The whole purpose of this was to have a fun area where we can just have a big field that we can use the quads or whatever we want to do. I don't care if it grows grass back, that's fine. But the rocks in here are really bad, so I got them as good as I'm going to get them for now. As we're riding around, I'm noticing that the rocks are loosening up, so we'll have to keep going over it with the rake. You can see there's still a lot of rocks, and I spent hours and hours trying to rake these rocks up, and I got a lot of them up, but they just keep coming up. So I think the only solution to that is to put some more topsoil on the top. So maybe a screener is in my future, because I do have a lot of stuff I could screen out and get some good stuff out of it, but maybe I'll make a screener. Maybe that's a soon project rather than a later project, because these rocks are kind of dangerous. So I told my son to just kind of take it easy for right now, you know, as much as kids can do anyways, but he's pretty humble about it, so it's good. Right, Caden?
Yep.
Yep. He seems pretty happy with it. It's a perfect little size quad for him. I put a new intake on it, so it sounds pretty throaty. So in the future, maybe I'll expand this and go around this pond. There's already kind of a trail there, but I didn't want my son going on it because it doesn't have a barrier on the side, so I didn't want him like going in this pond. Maybe eventually, when I get the track loader going, I'll make a little berm on the side of it, so that way he can't accidentally go into the pond there. So I kind of did the same thing here. This is a bank here, and I just kind of piled up some more on the side just to make sure he didn't go over that. So over here, you can see if I didn't put up that bank, he would have a chance on going into that pond. So I told Caden, every time we go out here, if we could just spend 5 minutes and pick up these rocks every time we ride, then eventually we'll pick them all up. I got this quad for $750. And it's a 50cc 2-stroke. It runs pretty good. It's always one kick for it. And it's got a starter, and I just got the starter working. It wasn't working when I got it, but now I just got to grab a battery for it, and then it'll start right up without that kickstart. But I like that kickstart. I wish my quad had that. I had another Warrior that I added a kickstart one time. I've had a bunch of Warriors, actually. This is a Warrior 350 Yamaha. I've had, I don't know, 5 or 6 of them over the years. They're pretty good quad. All right, show them what you got. So this area in between, I'm just gonna mow that and keep it nice and groomed. And that way we'll probably put a little area, like a fenced in area for the dogs. That way they don't wander off too much. But so I know a lot of people are gonna ask me about these pipes that I put in here. These are perforated corrugated pipes, 4-inch, and it's a cheap pipe. honestly, it's the cheapest that you can go. But I found over the years, I've installed thousands of feet of this stuff, and I found over the years that as long as you take the necessary precautions with it and protect the pipe before you backfill, then you'll never have a problem with that pipe. You wouldn't want to do like 300 feet of Schedule 40 and have the perforations in it. That would just be ridiculous. There's no need for that in here. If you were doing it underneath of a driveway or something that's going to have a lot of weight on it, then maybe. But this stuff, honestly, with a foot of cover on it, you could drive almost anything you want over it. Not a problem. But I've installed thousands of feet of this stuff for customers, and I've never had any callbacks, never had any problems. And the reason is because you need to protect the pipe, and I always do. So as long as you do that, then you're all covered. When you put that gravel in there, even if the pipe fails, the water will still go through the gravel. So let me show you how the water's coming out of this pipe. So you can see here's the outlet of the pipe. This is the end of about 400 feet of pipe. And it always has water coming out of it. It never stops running. So like I said on the first video where I repaired the dozer, I don't have a lot of experience on a dozer. So places that I could have had room for improvement, as I was operating, I was getting better, and I was starting to realize that a lot of the stuff that I was trying to push, once I had a big enough load in front of me, I should just stop pushing down and just carry it on out to the end, and then go back and try to cut more. I think that's probably a mistake that a lot of people when they first get on a dozer make, is they try to take too much of a cut at once. Another thing that I could probably improve on was sometimes I was trying to steer while I was pushing, and you can do that, but I think it's best not to use the steering clutches when you do that. I think it's best to actually angle the blade which way you want and maybe slightly use the steering clutches. I don't know, I gotta work on it more, but I got a lot of different things I'm gonna do with that dozer, so I'm sure I'll get a lot of practice in on it. I even have some jobs coming up for it, so.